So I wanted to record a quick video to talk about the KC Cup. So you may have noticed we got a notification we have the next one coming up in April, as it does every year. And I wanted to give 3 tips for how to be successful in the KC Cup. Now, depending on your experience, the decks you use, and all things like that, what is realistic for you to achieve as far as like your ranking and your placement, can totally differ. And there's only one person that comes in first place. The incredibly talented players that are way at the top there. So it's up to you to define what is successful there. But I think these kind of tips are good for everyone and things to keep in mind. And with that, I'll jump in. To really make it to the top, I think that you have to first off be prepared for the meta. So have an eye on what is really popular in the game right now and expect to see it. That doesn't mean it's the only thing that you're going to see. It doesn't even mean it's what you have to play. But in some way, your deck should at least not be incredibly vulnerable to those things. So for right now, like the Phantom Knight deck, now that Requiem Dragon has come out, is a clear tier 1 deck. According to Duel Links meta, if I'm looking over my other screen here, Infernoid is number 2. It's been around a while, but still very powerful. Mech Knights, as I've typically played, all will have hit by the ban list, but at the same time, still will be powerful, I'm sure. And you have like Solomon Great, other things like that are going to be common. If you're playing a deck that is weak to those things or very weak, you're probably not going to do too well. That's not like a fully encompassing rule. Maybe you can make an exception there, but let's say those decks, make up 40 to 50% of the decks that you play against, and if you're setting yourself up to lose there, it's just not going to go well. So you can't be too ignorant to what is popular and kind of what is common right now. You should be prepared, and even if it's having like a card or two in your deck that kind of addresses the strengths and weaknesses. For example, with Requiem Dragon, that is, we know that it stops effects, so if you want to target it with a Stellar Trap, or make sure that you have a couple of Stellar Traps that are going to be able to get rid of cards like that, like a couple of Book of Moons, and things like that. So a bit of balance in your deck to ensure that. Now with that said, the second item is to do what you enjoy, and play decks that you enjoy. You can't really force yourself to play a deck that you hate. You're not going to last long in this game because you think it's really good. Like, I've played the Phantom Knights deck, the recent one, and I just don't enjoy it. Maybe that'll change. Maybe I'll play it more. I can understand why it's a tier 1 deck. I have videos up where I played against it. I didn't do too well, or even decks that are duels that I've beat it and had to really grind out because it's just naturally very strong. So, you have to enjoy what you're playing and find a deck that works for you, right? As long as it's prepared for the meta, don't think that you have to pick like a tier 1 deck and that's the only way to win. Even looking at the last KC Cup, for example, the person that came in first played a Mermail deck, which was not even a tier deck, and absolutely crushed it with like 80,000 something points. Another top 8 deck was Elemental Heroes. We had, Xyz, which wasn't, I'm sorry, the Galaxy Xyz deck with the Galaxy Eyes cards. Like, that was not a tier deck either at the time, and it's dropped off a little bit since. As long as you're playing a viable deck, like one that'll obviously is still powerful, maybe like right outside the tiered rankings from Duel Links meta, then you're gonna put yourself in a good position, and you can take one of those decks, for example, and you can put tweaks on it to make it your own. Again, using the tips that I mentioned in the beginning there of being prepared for the meta of what you think you're gonna see. This also means that like you can take a deck that has recently been hit with the ban list and make tweaks to it to still make it viable and change it around or turn it into a hybrid of something else. I think a good example of that will be with the Mech Knights. I put a video out recently of kind of combining it with Crusadia and how powerful it can be. I don't know that that's what I'm going to play for the Cup. I don't know what I'm even going to play for the rest of the month. I'm going to fool around with a lot of other things, but don't think that you have to just take like a top tier deck and that's the only way to win. If anything, people are going to be more prepared based on that previous tip I had, and try something new and different. So at the end of the day, you kind of have to be prepared, but also enjoy the deck that you're playing. And for my third tip, is have multiple decks prepared for a few reasons. Now the first reason is that playing a lot of duels with one deck can be very tiring. And it's not just like a lot of duels over the span of a month. If you're in stage 2 and you play 100 duels, that is a lot. You're going to play a lot of continuations the same way. You're going to play a lot of the same matchups. You're going to play the same hands and the same things like that. It can get repetitive and very stale, and it can hurt your concentration, your focus, and you can have a little bit less fun because of it. And all of those things can hurt where you end up placing in the tournament, which at the end of the day, that is why we're playing. So, you know, have a few ready for that reason. But the other reason is because maybe the deck that you prepared originally is not doing how you expected it to. You are not getting the results you were looking for. Maybe it was you had a tier 1 or tier 2 deck prepared and you said, these are the best cards available and I'm going to crush everyone, and people were prepared for you. And you have to be able to pivot, and having something else prepared, jump in, try it out, and see how it goes. Now that said, that doesn't mean after 10 duels, if you're not like 10 wins or 9 wins, that you're doing something wrong. There is luck. There's a lot of luck in this game of whether you go first or whether you go second. And if you go first in a deck that's not made to go first, and your opponent plays a ridiculous play his first turn and you lose, that doesn't really mean you did something wrong. You know, you may not have a great deck, or you may have a great deck and you had a bad hand. There's a bit of superstition, there's a bit of statistics and how those things work out and all of that. So all that to say, be patient. You know, if it's a deck that you really believe in, don't give up on it after 10 duels. But, you know, after you give it enough time, if you say, like, this one thing isn't working, you can change cards around in the deck, or you can just try out another deck. I think 2 or 3 decks at least prepared is a really good option to have. Sure, more doesn't hurt, but you also want to make sure they're decks that you're very comfortable playing. You know, especially the more complicated the deck, the more you need to really understand it and what to do in what scenarios, because when you're playing against very, very talented duelists, as you're going to be in the second stage, you can't make wrong decisions if you want to continually win. I could count, the number of times within the last KC Cup that I just made mistakes. I should have played something differently, and I find that happens more with Mech Knights than, let's say, like Goki, where the way you play it is usually pretty straightforward, and no matter what deck you're playing against, is always going to be very similar. So I think 3 decks is a good number, as long as you're very familiar with them. These don't have to be exact rules, but I think following these 3 rules of being prepared for the meta, playing decks that you enjoy, and having multiple decks at least prepared are going to set you up to get through stage 1 and be pretty successful by your own criteria for stage 2. So let me know what you think. Do you have other tips? Is there other things that you'd like to talk about going into the next KC Cup? And do you find this content helpful? Let me know what you think. Thank you so much for watching.